hearing from our members is workforce challenges. You know, boy, we would love to grow. 96% of our members said they're projecting this year to be as good or better than the last year, but they need people. They need more people. And we're looking at it as, okay, how can we help? And again, that is one of our priorities too, is supporting workforce strategies. And so with that, I think we'll get started on the real show. But before, we do have a restroom outside here. The Keurig is on. Feel free to look in the refrigerator, take whatever you want out of there. There's things in the bottom that have alcohol, so be careful. Those are, you might want to. But yeah, that would make for a very fun.
Go either way.
So, does anyone have any questions before I turn it over to Amy? Well, again, on behalf of the chamber, I'm so glad you're here. You're going to be a great resource for your employers as being able to have a couple more tools in your toolbox when it comes to engaging with you, which can be a challenge. But we're going to find out every possible way we can get those youngsters involved in our workforce. So with that, I want to introduce Amy Johnson. She is the owner of Cardinal Consulting Solutions. I'm sure she's got a little background information, but I love the fact that Amy took an opportunity to build a business for herself, start her own business, 2020. Beginning of the end, early 2020, and launched her business and is now working with so many businesses throughout the county to help them with their workforce challenges. She's got a wealth of experience and doesn't take no for an answer too. So she's the person you want on your team. It's just like, okay, we're gonna make this happen. And all these things that I've dreamt about over the years, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had this great connection with schools and we could get the teachers and the schools and the students and the employers all together, and ding, we have Amy. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amy. Again, feel free to use the restroom. I'm so glad you're here. That's all the words I have today. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Lisa.
You bet. Enjoy, guys. And I'm gonna slide close this door, I think. Maybe not. Okay, so if you feel like you need to, and we have a great room here, but it's pretty distracting. Feel free to peek out. Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming today. I'm excited to see so many familiar faces and some new faces. So I'm Amy Johnson. My background is human resources. So I spent 20 years in that career. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, decided to take that experience and what I love about it and try to help solve some workforce shortage solutions, or come up with some. And so I realized that the world of workforce development is so large that I really needed to find a niche. And so there was an opportunity to help Ottertail County as an independent contractor with their youth workforce programs. So I jumped on that, and that was at the end of 2021 when we started that, about October 2021. And so that work was funded by American Rescue Plan dollars from the pandemic. And then shortly after starting the youth workforce navigation program with the county, and it's really simply just bridging businesses with schools, because on both sides we were hearing, I don't have time and I don't know who to contact. It's really as simple as that. So we wanted to help solve that. So shortly after starting that program, we applied for the Youth Skills Training Grant. We have 20 schools, usually school that requests that grant and is the recipient. In this case, we happen to be, Ottertail County happened to be the largest collaborative recipient history. It will not fail. So we have challenges because of that. So we work closely with Lakes Country Service Co-op and our other consortium leaders to make sure that we are compliant in the schools and we're not saying things that are not realistic and whatnot. So my expertise today comes from the 20 years of HR, always asking my leaders, when we get into the high school, and often being told no. And Lisa said earlier, I don't think no well, and I think people know that. But so then I would do what I can to try to. So now I actually get to. So that is, I guess, why people say that I'm an expert on the subject, because this is what I talk to businesses about every day, talk to economic development leaders about it, and I'm in the classroom with the students. They would never claim to be an expert if I'm not. On why there's so many barriers with high school students. So that is me. We did name company role, but I just want to make sure that I satisfy the reason why you are here today. So if we could go around the room, and if there is something specific, what you're hoping to take away from today, whether it's specific to your work, the company, or if you have a company mission or whatever it may be, leads with something today. You want to start, Abby?
I guess. I think just getting ideas on how to reach more high school students and being a person after school or people that haven't worked.
I think for me, it's just something to also find out how you folks might be reaching as hard as we can. And we typically hire 70 seasonal summer staff that are typically age 18 and under. Used to be patients with
networking with you, with students at schools, with just a huge web.
We are a village, and I always say it takes a village to do this work. I don't do it alone.
I will, anything that we can learn from the next generation, help them get into the workforce and be successful.
So we currently have some students on staff. I'm using that way. I guess we also, with Someplace Safe, have volunteer opportunities, and I've been hitting the barrier with volunteer, whereas in the past we have, but probably the last 3 or 4 years we just haven't had nothing. I think some of it's
Additional. I should ask her first. Yeah, no, that's good. I need to see. I think we do a lot of different things with the youth, but I think just learning like what opportunities are we missing that maybe someone else is using that we're not using, because I feel like we're in a lot of areas in the community, but maybe we'll learn something different today that we're not particularly missing. So.
Shortages, fix that. So, yeah. We have. That's fine, but I'm hoping to It's interesting. I'm so worried about them.
What are you worried about?
I just.
That's what people say, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, you know, and they wanna be way up here, and we're all way up here. But we worked really hard to get to that spot. And so these people, you know, they've known. That's your work. So it's just kind of navigating that without really, I mean, because their expectations are so different. Or is it that's why I brought up so many points. Anyway,
Thank you.
I was just, I mean, obviously getting engaged with those, try to get those as a most of the, in sports and they want to work, but they don't have time to work, and how do you, just how do you connect? Get more be involved when they, a lot of them don't think they can work when they're in a lot of sports.
I don't feel the same. I don't necessarily, I primarily work with our client desk and we don't necessarily hire teams. I also oversee products. And so my thought is to kind of know what they're looking for, understand their expectations, while also our expectations of them. Those don't always match. We can know the job works and the expectations.
I'm very knowing that like what you have found. Because I'm convinced, as you said, is shaped. I think we have expectations of COVID. And that group is it's tough. It's really tough. Very.
Yeah, that's big. Because I know that we see that in your employees. Right, there's a I mean, the first thing I think about is my company is also a vocational rehabilitation community partner for folk rehab. And so, like when we look at our youth with disabilities, because they're also part of the program through Rural SEP, Amy does the youth program at Rural SEP. Some of those individuals were well in the classroom, verbal, and then after the pandemic, now they're not verbal. So I think of it as they were not allowed. I don't know what the scientifically haven't studied, but it's just it's big. The big thing to research and understand, because when you look at maybe our mainstream kids, they've been through the same thing. Touch people or go near people, or so yes, it's going to affect them. I wasn't in the classroom pre-pandemic landing. Now they're afraid to call on their cell phones. Like that's not going to happen. You know, maybe some of them that are a little more comfortable with that idea, or they do that at home, or their parents have made them, or whatever. But when I'm talking to the classroom about how to reach a business, and I say, would you rather call or email because text isn't an option. Well, email, but what do I say? So there's a lot of hand holding, and I don't know if there was more hand holding during the pandemic. That's something I want to try to figure out. Because they think that they're that they want it to be happening. So, yeah, it's a deep well. Well, good. Well, I think that we'll get through what everybody is here for today. And if we don't at the end, I'd like to do more questions as well. We said that it takes a village to do this work, and I work closely with our DEED workforce strategy consultant, data analysts. And so the data that I get always comes from DEED. Here's some information from them. And if you notice, does anybody follow their Workforce Wednesday webinars? They're talking a lot about Gen Z lately, which is anyone 25 and younger. So millennials are out of the conversation and Gen Z are in. You're welcome, millennials, because that was painful, wasn't it? So they are recognizing that Gen Z is an increasingly engaging population. So when you data and the charts that DEED provides by age group, Gen Z is the most increasingly engaged population. So that just warrants this work and the need for this because they're wanting these experiences. So you're in the right place today. You're ahead of the curve being here because this is where we're headed. We have to do this in order to help build future. Another thing that data is showing is that students that have a CTE, which is career and tech ed in their schools, which is every school in our region right now. So students that have that experience in CTE that includes work-based learning are more likely to stay and work in their home region. And so the good news is that in our region, Lakes Country Service Co-op worked hard this school year to make sure that all of our 14 schools around us have the credentials that they need to offer work-based learning, which means that they are releasing these students to employers to get high school credit for the time that they're at. And so that makes them compliant and easier for them to say, yes, let's do this, than being in schools. And then Minnesota DEED conducted a survey with high school students, and the results supported the notion that students do want to hear from employers. And I validate that being in the classroom, that is what they're saying. And so here's something, does everyone know James Whirlwind Soldier? He's the new chat code. I was talking to him the other day, and you could listen to him all day long. He's just brilliant. So he had said, and I quote, "The exit of boomers from the workforce and the rise of Gen Z as the dominant workforce generation is turning everything we know about recruiting and retention on its head. And we have been using recruiting and retention strategies that have been antiquated for decades. They're out of date and need innovation." And so he also says you're ahead of the curve by focusing on registration. So the next slides are from DEED. I do believe these were just pre-pandemic, but I feel that they still stand true. And so this is from high school students conducting these surveys. So what information is most helpful to decide the type of career you want? Students are saying that they want to know what people typically do. They do want to know how much money the job pays. Sometimes they ask about the education that the job requires. What type of schedule and hours the job typically requires. Is to find an opening, what region of the state is the job. So more importantly, they really want to know what people typically do on the job. And so to Sierra's point earlier, that they don't know what they're getting into, or they don't know how to do it, right? Yes.
Yeah, they just kind of.
Yeah. Right. So there's a gap there. And you can just get very simple-minded. I realize it is a big challenge, it is a big gap, but that back in their mind as a student who is so innocent and hasn't stepped foot. When I talk to them in the classroom, I say, well, I want to do this, but I don't know how, so I don't think I should. What? And then they'll say, well, I don't know anything about it. And they don't understand. They don't have to know. So they get scared. They're intimidated by the thought of doing something that they've never done in they actually don't realize that there's on the job training. So one thing I wanted to mention today is in your ads. I know I used to see this a lot, but if you just say no experience needed, or we will train you, that doesn't work for them as much as you really don't actually need to know. You don't have to ever have done this before. Something that's related to this job. Then the students were asked, how would you prefer to learn about different jobs? Taking a class about careers, which most of them are doing now in our region. They have senior seminar. There was many years when that was missed, but good news is they're learning about life skills and work skills and all of that in the classroom now. And then asking parents and family for advice, talking with guidance and career counselors, etc. So, but really, as you can see above and beyond, hearing from people who work in jobs. So you may have seen that the county does a lot of field trips that employers do. So I coordinate field trips. And one thing that I encourage we'll talk about planning and having a successful student. The number one thing is making sure that you have people from your business that are talking to the students about how they got to where they are. Even better, people that started coming into the employer not knowing anything, like in manufacturing something, and worked their way up. And they like to hear those stories, and they do like to hear from CEOs also. There's some things out there that say they don't want to hear from CEOs and owners anymore, but they actually do. So, especially the CEOs. And give some swag. So here are benefits of engaging with youth. So as mentioned, you're building your future talent pipeline. Once you establish that connection with the school, it becomes organic and you're thought of at the schools that you're working. Then you have the teachers contacting you and say, hey, can we come and visit your facility? I mean, that's really what you're trying to do here. It does take a little work on the front end to build those relationships. And yes, there's turnover in the schools every year, but as long as you have 2 or 3 teachers in the school that you have a good relationship with, then we consider that to be sustainable. And then the data showing that retaining workers in our region, increasing employee engagement and morale, because your employees, they're not you. See these youth coming in and hear that they like them. They're now a mentor, and sometimes they don't, but often they do. And they don't because they don't understand. Helping students understand career options close to home. They see the outside of the building when they drive by, but have they ever been inside in your facility? They know what careers are available. And then investing in your community. So this is something everybody says, and sorry that the words are so small on your slides. That was not planned. So everybody says, well, where do I start? What do I do? So here are 10 ways to engage with high school students. The go-to is always, well, sure, we have interns. We do internships. We have often they'll say, oh, we have college. This is starting earlier, this is high school, typically 16 plus. And we'll talk about those barriers to manufacturing. But you can also do job shadows. So what this engagement level really comes down to, it's not just your capacity, but it's really all about the student schedule in high school. So does the student have enough credits so that they can leave the school? Sometimes they don't. Then you can offer many of these, but not a formal internship. So if the student only has, well, I can probably let them go for 2 hours or what have you, that could be a job shadow where they have a career of interest and they want to follow an engineer or an aquatics director or whatever they may be interested in just for that time, because the value in that experience is being in the environment, being around the people that you would work with. What is the tone of the culture? And this could be industry to industry, because if it's somebody interested in marketing, I would want them to go to manufacturing, facilities, city. I mean, none of those environments are going to be different, but it's all marketing. And you're missing a lot of industries. But that's my point is there's some positions where they might really like marketing, but then they have to figure out what industry they feel most comfortable in. So that's the importance of any of these, but job shadows is what would happen to student training schedule. Then company tours, how many people here but one? But and we'll talk more about that too later. Classroom speakers. So an example of this is if you have a position that is, it would be really hard to welcome a student in to follow somebody, or maybe it's a hazardous position. But you are always looking for somebody to fill that role, or you have a high demand for that role. You should go into the classroom and talk to the students about it. For example, Otter Tail Power, their line personnel. A student cannot shadow, intern, anything with them. It's just too hazardous. There's no exceptions. So there are line personnel that will go into the classroom, bring all their stuff, and talk to the students about what it's like to become that position. So, and the teachers love it because it's just a good experience for the students. Student mentoring would be similar to student project support. So if a student's working on a project for school and they help with the industry specific or career, you put yourself out there as you would be willing to help a student with that, or you'd be willing to pair the student with, we'll say, your marketing person or an engineer, so that they can provide that guidance to the student, so that they're getting that exposure to the career at the same time as learning, getting that hands-on experience in the classroom. So, and then material donation, especially manufacturers or companies that have scrap that they don't need. The CTE, career tech ed instructors, they're always looking for that for their projects. So if donating materials like that, then again, you're just organically thought of. Like, let's say we get, I don't know what the scrap is.
I know.
Okay, so we'll say glass. If we get glass from Vector, maybe they do this, or maybe we can call them about this. So it's kind of a touch. Doesn't have to be scrap. Get creative, like what could we offer? And then student transportation funding. For example, I have a youth skills training program. I have a student that goes to Henning, and he interns at Shoremaster, kind of a long drive. So he asked if he could get help with transportation funding. So through youth skills training, that is something we cover, but in this case, it was like a 20-week assignment. Well, it's couple times a week, it was like almost $500. I said, well, we have 2,500 students in the county. I don't think we could do 500 for each student. So we ended up maxing, we will do up to 200, but then that leaves obviously leftovers. So in this case, I mean, Shoremaster's already paying the student, so it was kind of a big ask, but we still did a gas card for him as well. So I'm sure you are aware that transportation is a top barrier in these experiences and employment in general. So we provide gas cards to help them get through that barrier. So for this student, so he doesn't have to worry about filling his tank. So any questions on this slide? All right, who has seen this? What is it?
This is the new career path for the high school students, right? I have a 9th and a 10th grader, or a 8th and 9th grader, so it's really cool, actually. It's interactive, like, and figure out what kind of high school classes. Show you bigger.
All right, so yes, thank you. And I'm actually gonna hand one of these out to all of you while I explain. Let me look at my notes so I don't ramble or forget something important. Been rambling, haven't I? All right, so. All right, so this is the Minnesota Career Fields Cluster and Pathway Chart, as Kenna said. It depicts the organizing framework of the foundation knowledge and skills, career fields. Technically, it's career fields. Clusters are the box and carrot. These carrots here are the pathways. Minnesota will use for developing programs of study in career and tech ed. So in layman terms, most guidance counselors use this tool to help students plan their class schedules based on the results of the student's interest assessment conducted at the school, and then where they want to go in their career. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have you look through this, knowing that this is what the student is using for trying to decide what their schedule is next year, which ultimately is what do I want to do with my life. The middle here is the field. So this is, I kind of look at student motivation level. It's my way of simplifying what we're looking at. So these are your career fields like ag, food and natural resources, art, communication and information system, engineering, manufacturing and technology, health science, technology, and human services. And then the clusters are, I know I want to be in human services, but I also know I want to do law, public safety, or whatever in their corrections. So this is the students that is undecided, but kind of has a, well, I know I want to be in that field. The cluster is a little more zoned in, like, well, I kind of know I like what that looks like. And the pathway, super specific, and those students do exist. They know exactly what they want to do. Might be something that their parents did or their aunt or uncle did and they love it, or they just have always known. And so I'm going to pass this out, and this will be useful later as well. With either your highlighter or pen, highlight, I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Put yours already on the K-12 Navigator. All right, so if this ends up differently than what's on there, then I can update it for you. Because it may be. I want you to look at every area, highlight or circle where you can offer a career experience to a student. All right, next question. Remember, this is what the student is looking at. This is what the counselor is putting in front of the student to make that decision. So this is something that companies definitely don't have time for, or maybe take the time for, because you have to stop and look this over and evaluate. That's one of the hard parts, right? And so I guarantee that you offer experiences in more areas than you realized. And so I feel like this is a valuable tool for your business, because this is what is in front of the students. Not at every school in our region yet, but most of the schools. So I do use this when I'm in the schools. So this is an Minnesota Department of Ed tool. And so it's intended so that the schools design their curriculum based off of it, like a map. So if you're not on the K-12 Navigator, the work that you just did, you will be able to apply when you register, which is an online directory to connect business and school. So thank you for doing that. You will see the value here in a little bit in that as well. But if not, just to open your eyes as to where you can offer students experiences and what's kind of in their head in terms of options. I had a student yesterday, because there are careers that may not be on there. Does anybody have a career that you wish was on this chart? That counts, anybody? Okay, well, yesterday, yes.
You know, I've seen this and I think it's a wonderful tool. My only struggle that I have with it is that it doesn't ever clearly identify the career track for people that want to go to trades. I mean, if I'm a high school kid, I'm looking at engineering, manufacturing, technology. I know that it falls under that. But let's say I struggle mathematically and I know I don't think I can handle calculus in college to be an engineer, like pretty mechanical, but I think I want to be maybe an electrician or HVAC guy. This never offers that pathway. So I just think there's an opportunity at a large population of those kids that we need to tap into because as a city entity, right, we kind of, I circle a million things on there because we kind of oversee so many different weird things running in the city. But one of the greatest areas we struggle is finding those people that always have enough applications of people that have bachelor's and master's degrees. Struggle trade skills. It's also around. So it would be nice to see this expand into tapping into the high school kids that want to go those pathways.
Right. I've heard that before. And we get, at the county, we get that question a lot is why don't you ever talk about trades? Well, I don't know. But I think a lot of people aren't talking about it and that doesn't make it right. So that would be an MDE conversation, but I sometimes get to sit with those people, so I could ask that one day. But for the county, we are doing a construction trades field trip. Because the two fields that the students ask about and the employers ask about that we don't talk about naturally is trades and IT. So we're starting to kind of play in those fields. Those are not youth skills training supported, which is fine because we have youth workforce navigation, which is good. And so what I'm finding with the trades is that's probably my field trip that's been hardest to recruit for, which is another problem.
Another example is driver's license. Everybody thinks that's over the road trucking, but yet all the requirements to operate our equipment within a municipality or county, snowplows is because it's over 25,000 pounds of vehicle. Driver's license. And years ago, every farm kid had one. We can't find anybody come in with a CDL, so we're started with those kids that fit that really well and develop a program there because M-State has developed a program, so has Web Science, but $6,000 tuition because now the government says through FEMA you have to have a 30-hour class in all the departments. So we put these barriers in place that kind of handcuff us all to recruit because the requirements are not that a lot of people. So there's another opportunity. I mean, I think a lot of businesses in this area are struggling to find people that just have really key basic skill sets that used to be abundant.
Yes.
So that's not even, I mean, no, you don't even get an email back saying, hey, I'm so sorry, we didn't accept you, or hey, you know, this. So it's kind of frustrating and going back. I'll talk to you all day long, but if I can pass this, you have to have some. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's a little too much of a barrier, and it's just like, you know, almost 28 years old, and I can't do a job because I have to pass a test, and it's customer service. So it's just like, and then at that point,
Well, so in that an adult area. But I hope that that employer isn't saying that they have workforce shortage problems, because you're right, that's a very. But I could speak to a high school student trying to contact an employer for an experience. Just today, I had a student reach out to me saying that she wants to have an experience in human genetics. She can't find it. Challenges out there. So, so I'm like, let me reach out to a few healthcare facilities and see where I can experience. So I said, Professor Alex. So I called a healthcare facility in Ferguson, a healthcare facility in Alec, and I can't tell you how difficult that experience was for myself. And I thought, that's the same thing, like, that's a reason to quit, a reason to stop. You might really want something, I get it, right? This person, I was with her on a healthcare field trip, and I lost her. I was responsible for, and we were leaving the lab, and I thought, oh, I'm off. One, where is she? And so I mean, we weren't that far, but it was missing a child. So I went back in the lab, and she was in deep conversation with the lab tech. And so she found her spark in that room. And so now she wants to, so now she wants to get back in that situation, and she is a junior. So, but same kind of thing, like, I know how to talk to these people, but I thought, yeah, let me try, because sometimes then I learn how that experience is for the student. So I can imagine if she would have called, I mean, it would have been hard probably to call in the first place, but then what question to ask. And so it's having your business ready for those questions. You know, who is the contact person? And I am telling the students, reach out to the business, especially if they're on the K-12 Navigator, which you all believe if you're not already. These businesses are on this directory because they want you to contact them. So make sure that you have a plan so that when your receptionist or whoever receives the call and the student says, I'm interested in this career, who do I talk to about career experiences or internships or whatever it may be? If these companies knew where to send me, which they did, but when they said they were busy and couldn't talk to me, and they didn't know if they offered human genetics, which is fine. But I'm really glad the student didn't call. So, you know what I mean? Just like have a plan and remove those barriers right away so that you say, yes, we would love to talk to you. Because it's just a conversation. You're not making promises at that point. You're just engaging the conversation.
What's a 12 K-12 navigator?
Oh, we'll get there.
Okay, I was like, wait, because I missed something.
All right.
I have a question with the K-12 navigator. So I think I put the thrift store on there and I uploaded like a Facebook video for the virtual tour. If you have businesses that have such different areas, like we have a thrift store and we have our advocacy services, then we have our director who does like fundraising and grant writing, and then we have our parenting time centers. Do you recommend separate? So like working at the thrift store is going to be a completely different experience than being an advocate. I'm helping them like find their connections for all different services.
You have one contact for all those services?
Not really. Each program, so we have like our executive. We all work very well together, that if somebody reaches out and they're not who they're looking for.
I mean, if they have different entity names, you could register them separately.
Or it's like there were someplace safe thrift stores, someplace safe advocacy offices, someplace safe parenting centers.
Yeah. Yeah. So just make sure, because you indicate who the contact person is on that. That would be the point person. So that would be the person that you would make sure it's educated on. To talk to that student, so that those barriers are removed, so that conversation isn't easy for the students. So just knowing that. Does that help? All right, so I think this is valuable because I know, because I've been in the classroom and I've been listening to students and on field trips. So I want to just tell you some things that I have heard students say that have made me stop, bring myself back to that simple mind of, oh, well, we're up here thinking this, but we need to start earlier, like infancy stage career experience. So here is, I had a sophomore on our healthcare field trip, and we were at the cottages in Fergus, and we were walking out, and he said, I didn't know that a memory care facility was just like home. I want to work there. And I thought, all it took was to walk, and then you know how much they struggle finding employees to work in long-term care or memory care. And that's all it took. And I thought, when all she had to do was walk through and hear about it. And then I hear them say all the time, I didn't know they did this here. Cool. I didn't know I could learn that skill here. They say, I can't work there because I don't know how to do that. We talked about that. They don't realize that you offer training and that learning is acceptable. Yes, they're in school all day learning. They don't realize that learning is acceptable, but it's okay. They say, I see myself doing this. Those are my favorite. Sorry. Buzzing. It's distracting. When they say, I could see myself doing this. And all we're doing is we're in the environment. And they're paying attention to the workers around them and what they're doing. And they're looking for that spark of what they want to do next after school. They certainly don't know what they don't know. For our field trips, our intent is to get the students that have an interest in that industry, not just to get up to school for the day. Some of those students slip in the cracks, but I find them and then I ask them 20 questions. But then I realize they do actually have a little bit of an interest. But that's what you should do too, and we'll talk about that, is making sure that your audience is right. Your audience is the students that are actually interested in you. So once they see, feel, and even smell the environment, they know. We've been on some stinky field trips. And I feel bad because the students sometimes are like, oh, we gotta get out of here. And it's amazing because some of the stinkiest, they don't have turnover. And I thought, how do you do this? It's not in Fergus, but yeah. But yeah, so that's real too. Is, I mean, if you're a machine shop and you're burning metal or burning plastic, there are smells there that you wouldn't know unless you're in the environment. And so that saves you on turnover. You know, if you do have, we get used to those smells sometimes, but tell me why they don't have turnover. I don't know. Nose one. But say you hire somebody and they've never been there, or they've never had a tour, and then they get there and it could be a smell that doesn't bother you because you're used to it, but they think, oh, that's not going to work. Now you have turnover. So that is that is one of the benefits. They say, I will never do this. All right, so this is also a success story because this means that again, we just saved a turnover. And this student saves money by not pursuing higher ed for that particular career. So like on our agriculture field trip, we went to Pearl Meat Locker. It's not just a market, it's also, they do animal production there. And so there was a couple females with us, and we were in the butcher area, and they weren't butchering, they were cutting up the meat. But it was quite a production they did for us, and so all the guys were standing around it just mesmerized, and the girls were in the corner over here. And I'm like, so what do you think about this? Oh, I like live animals. They did not want to be there. And so, but they've never been in that situation before. So it's all value. And then they say, so that's that sophomore student that I was talking about that I lost in the lab. I remember her saying, oh yeah, this is me. And that was Current Health, and they brought us like through all the departments in the hospital, which was great. And so she had probably been through 15 areas, but then she got in that lab and she didn't really want to stay there. So that's why we do this. And that's the value that they get from this. So earlier I said that I would talk to you about best practices for student tours. So these field trips we go on, you can invite students to your classroom or to your facility anytime you want. It's really just about having those relationships with the schools. We'll talk about how to make those connections. But in this case, I want to give you best practices for preparing for and doing the student tours. So I would recommend reaching out to your industry-related teacher. So in the city, you're all over the map, right? But if you're zoning in on an area, like human services, or what students would you want to?
Example is we work with Catherine Anderson.
So she does the hard work for you.
Yep. So we have students shadow our firefighters, stuff there. So we kind of put them in specific slots that they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
It's worked so far pretty well.
So, and you could be reaching out to Rotsay, Battle Lake, Underwood, Ashby, Hemming. Would probably be in, actually Rotsay, a large majority of their enrollment is from Fergus. And so that superintendent had said, we would like them to have experiences in Fergus because they live there, transportation is a barrier. And that's the case for a lot of our schools, is they have that open enrollment as well. But if you're trying to get into another school, there's only one Catherine. If you're, well, let's use manufacturing scenario. But you would contact the ag teacher typically, even though it's ag, they do machining, or CTE. So there's only one school in our region that has a work-based learning coordinator. The other ones have the certification within some of their teachers. They might even be in gen ed. But let's say that you want to expose students to your office or business, what you do, like at the Y, where would you want to expose students specifically? You invited them into. That's about a child. Okay, they're probably not considering you for childcare. So then they have childcare teachers. Or what you could do is go to the school website, pull up the staff directory, and look for even a gen ed teacher, or just call the main office and say, I want to expose students to childcare careers here. Who should I talk to? You want to get to the right teacher. So that's really number one, is find your audience. Don't just invite a school, because you're going to get students that just want to play school. You want the students that actually have an interest in your industry. And then when they get there, if you get gabs of them, because you can invite multiple schools. You don't just have to invite one school. I have a contact list. Be happy to share it with you. Also, it's just a list that I pulled together of all of the teachers in all of the schools. And I just do a mass email for my field trips, and I say, this is what we're doing. You have to have it all planned. They're not big into decision making, because that takes time. So if you say it's on this date, this time, this is what the students will hear about, do you have students that are interested? We're providing transportation reimbursement right now. That's something you could offer if they ask, but they don't normally ask. Because their teachers are drivers in the rural schools. So they just go. So that may not be a barrier to be on this program. But that is, I do find that students broken up into groups of 10 to 15 are better listeners, less friends, less distractions. But these groups, when you actually are reaching out to the students that are interested in your industry, are very receptive.
We're thinking of doing a student tour, and we're calling it Playing the Pit, where we're gonna have a bunch of our heavy equipment in our big pit. Right. Experience what that's like, so hopefully that will steer them towards that scene. But I think that is our lover experience.
That sounds very deep.
I know, my eyes were like, whoa.
There'll be something in you.
Not really, give them enough room, right?
Yeah.
A large sand.
Yes.
No, I
Too
think
much,
it's
but I think that's what you're talking about, is engaging them in. Feel
They have to feel
say,
it.
this is what I want to do.
Yeah. So we went to Ripley's in Earhart, and they let them sit in the trucks. They didn't move the vehicles, but I mean, it was like Ripley's, all of the mechanics there, they have their own toolbox, and they're ridiculously expensive and all these tools, and that's what the students really loved, is looking through these toolboxes. And then learning that each of the mechanics, they were theirs and they got to keep them. And that's the kind of stuff that they thought was cool. And then sitting in the trucks, and yeah. So that is, then you would reach out to like the shop teachers, and they would love it, because the teachers love to go on these trips too. So if they want to go, then obviously they're going to bring their students. So when we talked about choosing engaging presenters, less words, because you will lose them. So more, they like pictures. If you want to do a presentation, more showing, doing, whatever they can do with their hands, the better. If you have simulators, or if you have a production floor and they're doing, there's anything that, your training facility there? So if there's anything you can bring off the floor into the room that they could put together, like Otters of Power in the classroom. They put together a simulation of taking apart transducer or something. I don't know, they had to put the gloves on and do the thing, and they just thought it was a riot. So, and they were all engaged because they were watching their friends look silly and do these things that you can make a lot of money doing. So that is really effective. And then hearing your employees' career path stories that we talked about. How did they get to where they are? Did they have to go to school for what they're doing? How long did they have to go to school? They will ask your employees sometimes how much money they make. They don't know that they're not supposed to ask that. But the employees are really good about, oh, we don't talk about that, sorry. Oh gosh, I could just see HR just like fidgeting in the chairs. But they do want to know, how much, what's the average, for these positions. And then moving groups through site stations. So for example, Perm Health did a really good job with 60 students. That was our largest field trip. And so we did groups of 13 is the magic number they picked, and it worked. So they had a tour guide for each of these groups. So we showed up, broke off into groups with a tour guide. And so that tour guide, they had planned out the stations that we would rotate through. And then that tour guide would move us through the stations, but within the stations, there was presenters. So the presenters didn't have to move. I feel like that would be a lot to ask, but they actually really like to get as many employees involved in it as possible, and the employees enjoy it as well. So we would be moving through like to clinic, to dietary, they even got us in the basement to where like all the HVAC and that stuff is down there, because whoever gets to go down there, right? You don't ever see that, and there's jobs down there, so the students were really interested in that. But really being creative about moving them through your whole operation and having those conversations. And then just like the career wheel that we went through, consider all of the areas, especially those that are in your greatest need. If one of your stations could be HR and you're talking about employee events, show pictures of your picnics or fun times that your employees have together. We like to see that. And believe it or not, you do want to know about it. They do ask that question. I heard them ask about it. I heard them ask employers probably a handful of times, what kind of benefits do you have here? I thought, oh, so I know there are people that say they don't care about that. Don't talk to them about retirement. They're actually asking those questions. You certainly don't have to go into detail, but just like, these are what we offer. And then especially if you have benefits that make you stand out compared to other employers, let them know about that too. Provide a flyer of your jobs and or career progression. So if you have like a succession plan of your business or an overview of all of the positions that you offer, take a picture, kind of, you know what I mean? Just something that lays out what kind of jobs you offer so that they could take with them. And then I even had one company had a clipboard and they said, put your name on the list if you want to work here. And I thought that was bold. But there were 3 students that put their name on that list. So like, oh, I guess that worked. So there's really no limitations. And if that student is too young, you still have their information and you know that they're interested and try again next year. And of course they love swag. People usually do hats or industry related things, but that and food. They love food. If not swag, then food. So as I've talked about, so I'm not going to go into this too much, but Otter Tail County does provide support. So I talked about the Youth Workforce Navigation Program, which is all industries and sizes, and then the Youth Skills Training Program. So the YST program was passed in legislation in 2017. It actually was started for manufacturing because that's the industry that has the most hazardous occupations. And so this was in order to make exceptions to those careers to support paid work experiences for 16 and 17-year-olds to participate in safe, healthy, and meaningful on-the-job training at the employer's site. And so YST, in our case, we are working with advanced manufacturing, agriculture, automotive. Some of the very popular positions so far for our program have been welding, robotics, machining. Now, actually, our RDO is going to be a food employer very soon. They just went through the process. And so they will be for the students that are interested in diesel mechanics. So they'll be able to, the 16 and 17-year-olds will be able to do those jobs. So when I say OTC helps, that's most likely me. So I'm your navigator. So if you say like, all right, where do we start? How do we put this in place? What do we do? That's where I'm here to make that easier through next school year. So Otter Tail County provides me as that navigator for these programs for the business and the school. So I can help connect you with more schools up to the 13 that we work with. I can help with coordination of activities with businesses, introduce you to schools, and then coordination of student placements. Then strategic guidance. Well, we want to do this, but whatever barrier it is, I help you get through that. So, in order to be a YST employer, there is eligibility and requirements. And so we partner you with the schools, all of our schools are participating. So if you were to get positions, you'll have access to those. All the schools, these schools, ABC business is now YST approved for these things. So now you can set your 16, 17, and then there's people, it's not verbal. So the employers that are approved so far, when I asked them how was the process of getting approved, they true. If you don't have hazardous occupations at your business, it is unlikely that you would need to do this, but it is specifically for businesses that need an exception to get 16, 17 into career experiences. So we talked a little bit about this too, but who do you contact at the school? So if you are looking at the staff directory, that's all of their emails, all of the teachers and admins are on the school website. You can also call the dean office and ask for any one of those teachers, and that is a great gateway, especially the counselor. Counselors are always cheerleaders for this program. They will get you to the right teacher. For our IT field trip, I was connected to the business teachers at the schools that I haven't talked to. So it's, and then if you are contacting them, all you really have to say is, I'm with ABC Business and I'm trying to reach students for career experiences. And that's exactly what I tell the students. You know, they say, well, I don't know what to say when I call them. I am a student at this school in this grade and I want to learn about this career. It's just starting the conversation. So this, you have laptops? No? All right, well, I gave you this card, the K12navigator.org. You can do it on your phone also. There's a QR code on the back. But this, who here is, I know that some of you are on the Navigator. Who here is not familiar with the Navigator? So this was running out of time, but I'm on. All right, so this is because we're recording. This K-12 Navigator was in existence with Central Minnesota Manufacturers Association, which is a sister affiliate to Tri-State Manufacturers Association. They're in St. Cloud. They already had this product online that connected manufacturers and schools for the sake of career experiences. I love the functionality of it. It was simple, efficient, and effective, and that's all that we needed because nobody has time. Simply put, schools don't have time to contact businesses and businesses don't. And what they're saying is they don't know who to contact. They don't have time to figure it out. So we partnered with CMMA to develop this program. The users for this are educators, students, and employers. And so it's an easy way, it's just an online directory for students to find you, teachers to find you, parents to find you, because parents are part of this too. And for you to find schools. So if you're looking for contact information for a school, once you're registered, search, find a school. And then you can look by zip code. But here are schools and their contact information. So if there are names on here, this is used in the greater St. Cloud region as well. But if there are names on here, here's one you may recognize. You click on that and then it automatically generates an email. So and it's the same for students. When they're looking for you, they can search. When you register, try to make it as simple as possible. You're just entering your contact information. Now, one thing I will say is you did that career wheel today. If you want to add career fields, I think if you guys want to for it, because I think you just said manufacturing on there. But I know you have marketing and all that other fancy stuff. So I could do that for you because there's no login credentials for this because that just adds another step of complexity. But here is the career wheel. There's the fields, clusters, and pathway. So you would actually select what you offered. So what you circled, you would select there. So if you were to go in and find your business on the navigator, if you're already registered, whatever's missing, just send me an email and I'll get it added. Because once you register what area that you offer experiences in with, then the student is looking for a business. And we're gonna leave the activities open, but if a teacher is looking for a classroom speaker and you've indicated that you're open to that, they will find you on here. If a teacher is looking for a company tour, or if a student is looking for a job shadow, internship, etc., they can look that up specifically. I'm gonna leave it open and put our address, and superintendents typically allow students to go 30 miles one way. And so here are, all of these businesses are on here because they want to engage with students. And that's what I tell the students in the classroom. They're so used to like Google. Well, they don't know that I'm calling, you know what I mean? It just creates that bridge, and I make sure that they understand that the businesses that are on here because they want you to contact them. And then here are the reasons. Let's pick on Vector. So you guys like did the whole gamut here. So Vector is open for classroom speakers, company tour, job shadow, internship, etc. And then here are the fields that they offer. Oh, good.
Do we have, I haven't
Yeah.
checked on it, but
It's art, communication, and IT, and then business management, admin, and engineering. Nice job. So, so if I'm a student or a teacher and I'm looking for any of those things and I filter it down, they'll show up on that filtered search.
we could pick on Mike too, he's right underneath there.
Look at that.
I just
Same.
copied
Good job,
what you did.
Mike.
Same.
Ditto.
Uh-huh. So we've had a great response in businesses registering here. And so the county level, I said, all right, now I need to get into the classroom because we need these students to start contacting the businesses. So that's why I'm in the classroom talking to students about their career path and then guiding them to the navigator to use it. Because it's full circle. So that's the navigator, ladies.
Yeah, they're just chatting
Do
about
you
it.
have questions about that?
No.
Okay.
No, we're coming up with pitches for us. Yeah.
It's free. It's a free tool. There are no barriers, and that was the intent. So I just want to pass out a couple things here because we are fortunately out of time. So are there any burning questions that you have right now? We made it. Look at that. Some pictures from our trips. Was it too much information? And what did I not answer? This is what schools are around here, so you know what other schools you might want to. So I guess my big takeaway is that I would love for you to take with you is think simple. Remember that they don't understand that they don't have to know anything. Remember that you need to remind them that you don't care that they don't know anything, that it's okay. And that teachers need flexibility because of sports typically, because of their other commitments. Because you're up against their coaches, right? And so that's just part of it is that flexibility. But then if you can be flexible through the school year, and there are winter or summer employment opportunities. There's students that are interested in summer. So if you're advertising those. It's on child labor laws. So just a little reminder of what those are. Anybody want information on it? Oh, yeah, we'll talk about it. No burning questions? What is your biggest takeaway today?
Need more interns.
More interns. Yeah, we're getting
I like what you said about emphasize the fact that they don't need to have any skills. We teach.
Yeah, they're scared. That's a barrier on their side.
Thank you for providing a clear pathway to this focus. If there's a we will be reaching out directly to you. How that, if we're not, we get on this. Obviously, yeah.
I am a provider resource next school year
So this.
for that application. And if you have trouble connecting with the schools, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks.
You're welcome.